Hey everyone, I'm Benj from What Could Be Bad. Thanks for joining us today. I have a very special guest. I'm honored to have Pete Griffin from Musicians on Call here to chat about his life experience. And we are going to start all the way at the beginning. Pete, thanks for being on here with me. I'm excited to rap with you, man.
Yeah, no, it's fun. I mean, I'm happy to be here. It's going to be fun to talk, and yeah, let's get after it.
Yeah, cool, awesome. Well, I mean, you're a music guy. This is your passion, I know, and you've had a bunch of different experiences, but I want to hear your original, thoughts of or memories, I guess, of when you got into music and what was really that catalyst for trying to drive into that lane. What is your kind of original passion for it? How did you fall in love with music?
Yeah, I gotta say, I think my earliest memories, honestly, were around the record player and my folks playing records in the house. And it's funny, I grew up in New York, upstate New York, and the earliest albums I remember us playing were country albums. So Willie Nelson, Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers, I think were some of the earlier ones I remember as a kid singing along to, and then kind of moved on to Billy Joel, Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder, and kind of went on from there. But, that was a big part of our life, was listening to music at home, listening to vinyl, always listening to music in the cars and singing along. And it just kind of became part of our DNA as a family.
Yeah.
I mean, even to this day, I'll get a text or a call from my mom and she'll say, "You've got to listen to this new song by so-and-so,
I love that.
And then she's just like me. She won't stop until I've listened to it.
Yeah.
Did you listen to it yet?
Yeah.
What do you think? So it's really just a big part of our family life. And when I was in college and, I finished at Bucknell with a business degree.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to think, what the heck do I do with a business degree now?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what do I really care about? What do I love? And the answer was music. And so from that point, I just figured, let me try to figure out how I can work in the music industry.
Oh,
that's kind of how it started, I guess.
Yeah, I love all that. The bond that music can, tie people together through is really special. I've always admired when I see, we're lucky to keep playing concerts with OAR, and when you see families together experiencing something, that's a lasting memory. That's going to stick with them and really, drive their direction and passions in the future. I love hearing that you had that around the record player. I think there's something really special about the physical nature that music takes on through vinyl. And obviously we're in a streaming world for a lot of the interactions we get with artists. But, the vinyl record sitting around that, that's a real image that's, I think, it's not as usual anymore. But it's still cool because I imagine your mom, is still, the way you guys are interacting through streaming services is still a bond in itself.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny because, things, I don't want to sound like an old curmudgeon and say it used to be better back in the day, but there was something nice about working a little bit harder for your music. Having to, take apart the vinyl or the cassette tape or the CD.
Yeah.
The effort that was put into liner notes and putting lyrics in or artwork or other materials into the packaging, and just that whole discovery of it.
Yeah.
Again, I know people put lots of content out now, right? There's tons of content out there, but there was something I think about, the physical act of getting through a CD, pamphlet and the vinyl. One of my favorite albums of all time is Outkast's second album, ATLiens.
Yeah.
And that had a whole cartoon and storyline written into it. And it's just, that was just fascinating as a music lover to feel like you're really embedded in this experience you're about to have with the music. So
yeah, I get that. And I have some of those same kind of ties to albums. I remember when Dookie came out and Green Day, and I remember like looking so closely at all the little drawings on the front and just seeing the whole thing, I think there's still a lot of that, I think, in the content that we see, but to be able to hold on to something is very different than looking at a screen. There's like a layer of disconnect, I think, and I'm hopeful that this kind of resurgence of vinyl becoming more popular again is like an experience that the next generation who grows up with everything streaming can realize that there's something really special about that medium.
Yeah. There was something, beautiful too, to not even knowing if what you were singing was correct.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't just Google the lyrics or whatever.
Right.
There's so many songs that as an adult, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember I used to sing that as a kid, something completely different. One of the ones, this is funny, I was a little kid when this came out with the Eurythmics.
Yeah.
I thought the lyrics went, sweet dreams, tomato beans. And I was like, what the heck are tomato beans?
I love that, yeah.
But there's always those things
Those
where you
little
just,
parts of it.
It kind of makes it more funny and brings back other memories.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I think you're reminding me of my kid right now because he loves the song Roxanne. And he always wants to hear it on the way to school. I'm driving him to school, but he says rock sand. And it's like adorable, and it's one of those things you eventually figure it out and grow out of it. It's probably like the Santa Claus thing. But it's like to just like have those miniature associations that are unique to how you're listening to it. Like I imagine now if you go back and listen to the Eurythmics, you'll still kind of hear
and I could remember the room in the house I was growing up in that we would listen to the music. And, I mean, it brings back the scents, the sounds, the visions. It brings it all back. It's the beauty of music.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting how music does that, and also smell and some of the other ties like to our senses that we have do not tie so closely to those like memories and the visceral experience of where you were, what you were doing, things in the room and all that. I have those sometimes when, like I've heard a song somewhere and then I hear it on the radio and it's like totally out of context for the original experience, but I'm transported right back to a moment. One of those weird ones is my first concert, Weird Al Yankovic, and I'll hear any of his songs and I'm like back at Meriwether Post in Maryland, and I'm like remembering how far away he was because I was all the way at the top of the lawn just looking down at this little curly-haired sliver, of light way down there, and I almost start laughing because it's, Weird Al, he's hilarious. I'm looking forward to Daniel Radcliffe's, interpretation of his life. That should be very eye-opening because there's so much to like that guy.
Yeah, I mean, he was iconic.
Yeah,
he really was. I mean, there's people in that era of the '80s, Cyndi Lauper and others that just were larger than life characters. Again, I don't know if it's just my perspective from growing up or if that's how people now look at Taylor Swift and Olivia Rodrigo that way as well. In my mind, I kind of feel like, they'll never understand how iconic and huge these people were. Right. But maybe it's just different today, for the younger generation.
I think those superstars, like they're the artists of yesteryear, like the Beatles and, the Stones and, Joni Mitchell in that time frame, these people who are icons, right? Like, I think every generation has some of those, and you're probably like Taylor Swift might be like the greatest of all icons ever, which I absolutely love her music, her story, everything about how she's surmounted, industry challenges and, just the gamut of what a person has to go through, but specifically a woman, there's a lot to that. And if Taylor's watching, I hope maybe she can come onto this podcast and chat about it, because I do think she's a powerhouse, and it's beautiful to watch someone stand up to, the powers that be and win.
Yeah.
I love seeing that, especially, having a very strong partner. My wife is, just like that. She stands up when she needs to stand up. And I think the whole world needs more of that from all of us whenever there's any kind of like inequalities out there. And I'm hopeful that, we shed some light on those things here. And speaking of that, one of the things I wanted to chat with you about, pardon me, I'm fighting the allergies of the season, the dry throat. But so, one of the reasons we were coming together to chat today was because we've chatted a lot thanks to Paul Rakoff connecting us, a wonderful gentleman who's also on the pod.
Awesome guy.
Yeah.
And as you talk about groundbreaking folks, I mean,
Yes.
he's one of them. What he did to pioneer the support that was needed for post 9/11 vets.
Absolutely.
There's a generation of veterans that Paul really, led the way to make sure their voices were heard when I don't think many people realized that
How serious.
there wasn't a lot being done or being updated since the previous wars to take care of all these men and women coming home. So it's just really I'm proud to know him and to
Same
have
here.
been part of the work that he's done.
He's the type of leader that we need more people like that. Like he's so natural with it too. It's not like a forced thing. He just leads.
Yeah.
It's really impressive, and he's thoughtful.
Yeah.
It's never like anything but that.
There's a phrase that he always says that he kind of taught me, and I don't think he coined it. I think it's a military phrase, but it's just, you have to lead from the front.
Yeah.
And so many people, I think, are afraid to do that. It's like they want to lead from the side or lead from the back. But if you're going to lead, you have to lead from the front. You got to be willing to take risks. You got to be willing to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
And that only comes from, believing with your whole self in what you're fighting for.
Yeah. And I think just like Paul fought for the well-being of those soldiers in such a massive way and such an impactful way, it's a goal of mine with this to address the mental health of the community of our nation.
Right.
I think, there's a lot that's brewing due to the pandemic, due to these election cycles, due to the sphere of the world, just the way things are right now. It's very intense and divisive, and I'm hopeful for a better world, a better America. Personally, like coming from immigrants, I feel very strongly that right now we have a responsibility to listen more to our neighbors, to be a little, softer, not so loud. And I'm hopeful that we can shed some light on that. So specifically, I wanted to hear more from you about your experience growing up, because you shared with me that some things that happened to you, in your younger years really shaped the direction you took in life with your work, and it led you to a wonderful place, but there was a lot of speed bumps. There were a lot of times along the way that weren't so ideal or healthy. And I'd love for you to share with me a little bit more detail of, those things.
Yeah. So it's interesting, what you're referring to is a little bit what I shared to you about being bullied as a kid growing up.
Yeah.
And what's interesting for me is it wasn't until really just a few years ago that I think I really came to terms with how long that has stayed with me and in the different ways that it affected me throughout the course of my life.
Okay.
And I think what's interesting, and one of the reasons that I'm happy to talk to you and my colleagues and friends about it, is because I don't think it's a story that is unlike what many other people have felt.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things that, for whatever reasons, maybe because it happens in our youth or because at the time we're embarrassed or scared, we end up not really talking about or sharing, even though it's something that we could probably find a lot of connection with one another in.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of us that went through it. But yeah, since, I was a little kid, I got bullied in a whole bunch of different ways, from name callings to being, beat up or getting into fights, and even going to school functions or dances, being scared about, after I get dropped off, like I need to hide because I didn't want to be seen by people who I knew were looking to, start a fight or do something. And just that fear and anxiety that constantly was present through a lot of different, years of school. It really, I think, as I've realized as an adult, made me have a lot of insecurities, a lot of anxieties, and a feeling that, in some ways I just wasn't good enough, no matter what I was doing, that I still had to prove myself to be considered cool or worthy, and those types of things. Now, I think the truth is, those things couldn't be farther from the truth. Like, you shouldn't have to feel that way ever. No one should have to feel that way. But I think when, you're cut as a kid, you don't have the tools to deal with those things. And if you don't have those tools, then you don't know how to handle it as you kind of continue on through life. So I think it took me a while to come to terms with it. But when I did, and then kind of look back at my career, I realized how many of the decisions I made throughout the way perhaps weren't because it was what made me happy or what was most fulfilling to me. But it was still that inner child looking for satisfaction or to be loved or to be accepted or I think in many ways to appease the bullies, to make them see that I'm worthwhile or cool or successful. And so, as I left college and got into working, I wanted to work in music because I loved it.
Yeah.
And ended up having a great opportunity to get a job at MTV in 2000. So we're talking like the peak
rocking
of,
and rolling.
the peak of Total Request Live and these great artists and bands that were, again, just kind of, just monumental icons in pop culture.
Yeah.
And I loved it there. I had a great job. I kind of, worked with these most creative and incredible people, and I truly did love it. But my focus when I was there was, I got to keep working at this cool company. I've got to work my way up the corporate ladder. I've got to get a big job. I got to start making money. I wanted to be part of these events with the cool people and the cool clubs and the restaurant openings and the celebrities. And I really wanted to be a part of that for some reason. But
you didn't understand it at the time?
Yeah, I just didn't understand it. I mean, and what was funny in hindsight, like it felt cool in the moment.
Yeah.
I did feel cool in the moment. And then as soon as those moments were over, I'd be in my bed at night and just feeling empty. Like it wasn't filling the tank. It wasn't. Even
though you're with like the celebrities of the day and this is the path that you really worked hard to get to and you chose, there was still an unfulfilling like gut feeling in all that?
It was just kind of an emptiness. And it felt like on paper, it's exactly what I wanted to be doing. Yeah. And then I was doing it and it was kind of dark. I just kind of felt like, man, I'm not finding a lot of joy in what I do or in different places of life. Like it's hard to be happy. Why is it so hard to feel happy?
Yeah.
And I got to a point, I'd been working at MTV for a while, for almost 9 years. And again, I think the thing I loved about MTV was the people. Worked with some of the greatest people, creative, amazing people I'm still friends with to this day. But the work wasn't as fulfilling for me, and I just sat there and was thinking, what actually makes me happy in life? And what I realized was there was these things I was doing in the little time I had outside of work. I was volunteering at the Museum of Natural History in New York. I was teaching kids about science on Sundays.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I was working at this organization that was part of the Coalition for the Homeless that helped women from drug abuse situations and domestic abuse situations learn, business skills and life skills so that they can, get jobs and become more independent.
Yeah.
I was involved with all these organizations, and I was like, gosh, I'm just kind of using the little bit of free time I have here and there to do this thing that I love.
Yeah.
Why is that not more of the focus of how I'm spending my life?
Sure.
And I think to kind of take it back, to the bullying, what I realized is that a lot of the things I was doing, it was really my inner child trying to prove to the world that I was worthy, that I should be accepted, I should be loved, and that I shouldn't be picked on because, I was cool, I was worthwhile.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
Like to come to that realization 9 years into a career where your time has been spent really deeply entrenched in that. And I mean, did you feel like it was like you were wasting your time in any way, or did you, like at that point, because I'm sure that shifted because I know it brought you to this wonderful place that you're in right now, but do you remember feeling like, oh God, what have I done? Or was it more like, I need to just make a change and go forward?
It wasn't what have I been doing, because I really did enjoy the work and the people I was with. It was more of, I can't find happiness.
Okay.
And I've got to figure out what will make me happy.
Yeah.
And that was really what drove it, and again, it's like, sometimes as I've changed my career and work in the nonprofit space, people will say to me, that's so noble that you left the corporate world and are doing something.
Yeah.
And my answer to that is, it's really not. Like, if you're very happy trading stocks and that's what drives your happiness, then I'm not doing anything different. I'm doing exactly what makes me happy in life, and I find joy in it, and I feel gratitude that it's helping other people, because I think that's a big piece of it.
Yes.
And as our friend, Paul Rieckhoff says, always look for the helpers.
Yeah.
I think realized that I didn't want to be a person that needed help. I didn't want to be the person that needed someone else to help me out of a bad situation, keep me away from the bullies. I wanted to actually be the helper and be the person that can do my part to try to make people's days a little better, help them through a tough time. And that led to my own, fulfillment. But it was a long stretch to get there. And I'm not, that transition I took from MTV to the nonprofit space wasn't actually the moment that I realized all of this.
Yeah.
It was only a couple of years ago, and I was doing this leadership program at Oxford in the UK. And it was 40 C-level leaders from around the world, 28 different countries.
Okay.
I was the only American in the program, the only nonprofit person in the program. And you want to talk about imposter syndrome? I looked around this room and I was like, still feeling, how am I in this room? I don't belong here. Gosh, these people are probably looking at me like who let this guy, here in this room. And in fact, the first person I sat next to in the program was this guy that worked for I think a mining company in Russia. And the first thing he says to me, he's asking me what I do, and he's like, "We would never have let someone like you in a program like this in Russia." Now, he meant like in the nonprofit space, they don't really mix the nonprofit and business. Yeah. But I was like, wow, that's exactly how I'm feeling. So thank you.
Yeah. You validated my emotions in the moment, right?
Yeah. So thanks. But but what happened in that program is they had a moment where anyone could come up if they wanted to throughout the course of the program and share their kind of personal narrative.
Sure. Yeah.
And people had these crazy stories. There was a guy who grew up in Kosovo and his family left with just a suitcase during the war, and he's now a successful businessman in the Emirates. And again, I'm thinking, what could I possibly share?
Yeah.
These are people that are worldly, have these crazy experiences. Like, what am I going to share? And so I just said, screw it. And like the second to last day, I went up there and I just kind of told my story of what I was realizing about the bullying and how it affected me and my path. And
in front of this whole group.
In front of this group. And
wow.
I wrote some notes down.
Yeah.
And I was fine. I kind of wrote my notes, my bullet points, what I was going to share. And I did. And I was like, just a few minutes into it, and it was like waterworks coming down. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, like this is so embarrassing. Like, I can't believe this. I'm in front of this room of people, like I can't even look up. I'm like, oh, this is so painful. And I just kind of got through it. It took me a while, but I got through it. Mm-hmm. But then when I finally looked up, the rest of the room was crying. And these people who I was like, didn't feel like I belonged in the room with were like literally walking up to the room as I was speaking and like surrounding me and sharing that like they went through something similar and they had the same experience. And they're so happy I said what I did, because like they have those insecurities and they were bullied. And some of the decisions they made in their careers and life still have to do with those insecurities they have. And it also shared that, like, they were saying, we were looking at you like, gosh, like, I hope this guy thinks that we're worthy to hang out with him, this American running this nonprofit that's really successful and doing these great things. Yeah. And you just realize, gosh, we are all on the same level. What goes on in our head doesn't really add up to what's out there in the world and how people see us. And as soon as we realize that and can talk about it and share with others, we realize that, guess what? We're all in the same place.
Absolutely.
We're all fighting our own fights. We're all doing the best we can. And that's basically it.
Yeah. I am so touched by what you've shared. That's exactly the premise of what could be bad. And I mean, that is the whole thing, is that we're all going through this stuff, that there's a layer between us and everyone else who's seeing us, right? Like the true internal perspective, thoughts, feelings, the whole life of that internal to us is so important to reflect with others. And maybe it's your therapist, maybe it's your friends, maybe it's a group full of people that you're, connecting with in the moment. Whatever it is, I just think the world people need more of that connection to get this stuff out there and to really learn through others sharing that stuff as well. It's integral to, I think, a sound mental health practice is to just talk about what you're really feeling. And I didn't do it, for a long time. And once I did, I felt better and I kept doing it. And then eventually this is what I'm doing, where I'm trying to find that connection with other people in a very personal way. I'm really, hopeful that there's, more stories like this that are out there, because being able, I know you're saying like you don't see it as noble or anything like that, but I do. And I also think it's brave to leave something that's like very comfortable too. Like when, even though I guess it wasn't fully comfortable, like you had a stable career, it was in an industry you care about, all those things. There's a lot of the boxes checked, but not the most important ones. Right. And that's really what's, a leap of faith that you're going to find that when you leave something. You had shared also, like, this wasn't exactly a linear path to when you came to understand this perspective that you were able to, really talk about at that meeting with all those people or the conference. And like, what was that in between? How did you get from point A to point B where you could jot down the talking points and to understand the spectrum of what you had, where it came from, how it was there, and then that you needed to leave it. There's a lot in that little middle part. Yeah,
I mean, for me, it was when the focus shifted from myself to others, that gave me, I think, space to really start to have more empathy, more understanding of people, and experience more things that kind of opened up my mind a bit. And I think the evolution from that was, it eventually led to the hardest part, which was to get inside my own mind.
Yeah.
It's almost easier to understand other people and to have empathy for other people. But the hardest part is to have empathy for yourself.
Right.
And to give yourself the space to start to understand why you are the way you are, and why you do the things you do and say the things you say, and what influenced all that. And so, I'm a very pensive guy, and so a lot of it came through introspection, a lot of it came through reading, a lot of it came through, therapy. And for me, it was kind of a combination of all those things that brought me to a place where I at least can have a better understanding of the why for myself, the why I do things, the why I am, and find peace in that. It's like the journey is difficult at times, but it also brings about a lot of peace. And when you find that peace in yourself, I think it just opens you up to be there for other folks as well. But I think, one of the moments that I still think about and remember is that I was on this journey, was that there was a friend of mine who owned a huge PR company in New York City. And he had some of the biggest A-list clients, in the world as his clients. So it was a very well-known guy, doing a lot of great things out there, doing cool things that, part of the New York City scene.
Yeah. As together as a guy could be.
And I was having dinner with him once, and we were talking about something, and he asked a question about my therapist. And I was like, "What do you mean, my therapist?" And he's like, "Well, what do you do for therapy?" I was like, I don't do anything for therapy. What are you talking about?" He's like, do you not have a therapist? I was like, "No, I don't have a therapist." At that point in time, it's like, I just thought therapy is almost like if there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Like that, that's, I think, and unfortunately how a lot of people think, there has to be something wrong with you that you need to fix.
Yeah.
And that's not really to me, what it's about, I mean, it's about an understanding of yourself, an understanding of situations you're in and people in your world and all that. And there was just like a light bulb moment where I was like, wow, not only does he see a therapist, but he's talking to me about it. Like, that's not an embarrassing thing to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, and it was a very normal thing for him to talk about. And then he was talking about friends of ours, and he's like, yeah, I mean, he's like, you may be one of the few people I know in our cohort here that probably doesn't have a therapist. And I was like, gosh. Not that then I was like, oh, let me find one just so I can say I've got one. But it was like, well, it made me think about, well,
maybe there's a benefit.
Yeah, there must be something to this.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be interesting to learn a little bit more about, you know, why that is helpful to people.
Totally.
But yeah, there's moments like that. And so that's one of the things I try to do with my team at Musicians on Call and even friends is to normalize that conversation, you know, because I think the more we talk about it, the more you share,
Totally.
You don't feel those insecurities because you realize, well, you know, that person's doing it and that person's doing it. And if people I know and care about or I respect are talking about these things, then why should I feel weird about sharing as well or taking care of myself in that way?
100%. I think elevating that conversation, normalizing it, destigmatizing it is really important for everyone, you know, and to Paul's point, you got to lead from the front and you got to walk the walk. I'm glad we're doing that now. And what you're saying, like, is very vital to well-being, I think, you know, and figuring out that therapy can help. For me was the same. I never really looked at it as anything like you have to have a big problem to need therapy. And it took having a big problem for me to go there and start to normalize myself a little bit, or I guess I should use a different word, like rebalance. Mm-hmm. And at that point, then I was like, oh, this is great. Like, I can talk about my problems. I can, like, you know, think them through with someone reflecting back to me what a very, like, rational, uninvolved perspective can provide, which is not something when you're an emotional being, you know, when you have so much going on in your life and there's pushes and pulls and, you know, things coming at you from all directions in the world we live in, you know, and especially being in the entertainment industry, there's a lot of different pressures. And I imagine you have a whole different set of those being at the top of a very large organization, and there's probably pressures I've never experienced, but I wonder about your experience with Musicians on Call. And first of all, your organization is amazing. You guys help so many people feel better, and essentially, like, on a daily basis, you are actively doing what I'm striving to do. So I'm really, you know, just happy that there's people in the world doing that good work, and also, like, reproving over and over how powerful music is and how it can change someone's, you know, healing process and the trajectory of their life. And that's really cool. And it's also wonderful for musicians who largely have to be on a stage and have to have a separation between themselves and who they're impacting. You guys put them right there.
Yeah.
And that's so cool. So I'd love for you to just share, you know, I mean, maybe some people don't even know exactly what you guys do. You could share that. I mean, I'd love to hear your perspective of how you guys provide well-being for people in the various circumstances that you do.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in Musicians on Call, we started, you know, this year's our 25th anniversary. So we've been around for 25 years. And it's interesting, the story of how we started, we had two co-founders, Michael Solomon and Vivek Tiwari. And both of them worked in the music industry in New York in the 90s. Both of them had lost loved ones. Mm. And in wanting to do something for the hospital where their loved ones are being cared, they thought, well, what do we know? We know music. Let's bring a musician to come to the hospital, and we can bring some happiness to the hospital through this performance. And so the first person they brought to the hospital was Wynton Marsalis, the, you know, incredible jazz musician. Yep. And they had him come down to the lobby of Sloan Kettering in New York and perform. And they had all these patients and family members and caregivers come to enjoy the music. And it's funny, we just recently found out, like, we've been around for 25 years, and this performance was probably in, like, It was before we started the nonprofit. So it was like 1993, 94-ish. And we just found out like a couple months ago that at that Wynton Marsalis performance, they'd also brought Sting and Dave Matthews and some other folks to be there. And we had no idea. It was because it's just kind of like, who do you know? Have them come by. And
so did they perform with
I don't
Wynton,
think
or was it just like they were hanging out watching?
I think they were just hanging out.
Wow.
We still haven't gotten to the bottom of it, to be honest,
Okay.
which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's these great moments, and they brought musicians back to play in the lobby. And finally one day, one of the nurses came and said, you know, we've got all these patients that can't come down. Could you ever bring a musician to come play at the room, you know, at the bedside of these patients that are stuck in their rooms? Yeah. So that was really the mission and focus of what became Musicians on Call. Is what we do is we bring musicians that go room to room to play at the bedside. So we're talking about, you know, one-on-one, intimate performances with patients, which is now happening all over the country. I mean, when we started, I think the vision was to be in one hospital in New York City, and that was it.
Yeah.
Now we've got programs in all 50 states. We're looking to grow internationally. And
it's beautiful, man.
Yeah, and the thing that's great about it with our mission is that, you know, music is truly universal. You know, you could play, you know, a song that's popular here and it might be popular in another community, or different communities might have songs that are popular to them, but at the end of the day, we are all using music in some way to help us.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people don't think about music as healing.
Right.
But to that, I would just say, think about when you're having a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
What do? You might close your door in your room and put on a song.
Yeah.
You know, I like to put on melancholy songs when I'm feeling bad. I like to listen into like...
Lean into it.
Yeah, like, you know, Raining in Baltimore by Counting Crows, or something that even...
Yeah.
That brings me to a place where I start to find a little bit, you know, more happiness because of the connection to the music. But it's also if we have a great day, you know, we put a song on in our car and we're windows down blasting it, and it's bringing out all these positive emotions.
Yeah.
Or it's bringing forth memories. You know, I could, you know, remember, you know, the linoleum floor in my freshman dorm, and I can smell it from certain songs that I was playing when I was there.
Yeah.
I could smell the beer from the beer pong table when Crazy Game of Poker comes on.
That's I love that.
But, you know, the truth is like it brings back these memories, and those emotions that it brings is healing.
Yes.
It's helping us with our mood. It's helping with our mental state. And so when Musicians on Call started, you know, I think we knew that, but there wasn't still a lot of science behind it. And what's changed over 25 years is that there's just so much data that music is actually helping people heal. And not just helping us emotionally and helping us our state of mind and our mental health, but there's studies that have shown that when you give patients access to music before surgery, that it's actually doing more for their pain management than medications that's given to patients before surgery.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, it's being used for pain management. It's being used to lower blood pressure, reduce stress. And so we went from, you know, 25 years ago trying to prove, well, this is a worthwhile endeavor, to now hospitals saying, you know, we need your program because it's actually part of the 360 care we're providing for people to help them heal.
I love it. I mean, that's changing the game of healing. You know, like you guys are changing that, you know, as you've went, and to have people jumping on board and realizing it in real time as you continue to grow your program, that's really fascinating. I would love to read those studies too, because I mean, I think, I know music is healing. I see it, you know, I've felt it myself, and it got me through a lot of my stuff. It's like I couldn't walk around. I couldn't, you know, even play an instrument, and I would just put on noise canceling headphones while I was laying in bed, and I would just, you know, process my physical body through like the escape of it. And I think, you know, it's almost how meditation also can help your body when you give yourself that space and the time to just be still. You know, there's a lot of people who have this saying like stillness is the key. I think Ryan Holiday has he's an author I really admire. He has a tattoo of it on his wrist. It's a good reminder that, you know, like of all that with meditation, I think, in the similarity to what you're saying. But there's also, I've read studies on music as frequencies, realigning your organs and your cellular structures and all that, like sound baths and things, like certain notes can hit, if you want to get into the yoga stuff, like chakras and the different, levels of your body systems. And I'm really fascinated by that just in general, because when I started with the band back in the day, I was like a screwed up, crazy teenager. I'd been arrested a bunch of times as an idiot, and I was a little arsonist and troublemaker in all capacities. Yeah. And I remember when, I had this very positive environment all of a sudden with the guys, and we were playing shows, and it was bringing different friend groups in high school together. And, we were able to, just connect in a way that I never really felt. I was a bit of a social butterfly. I had all these different, people that I enjoyed in different circles, but nothing ever brought these groups together like the music did. And all of a sudden I realized like the music brought this color and this, vibrancy to my life. And it healed me from being that angry, weird, adolescent into being a young adult who had a focus and, a drive now. And that was right around when I was going off to Ohio State and all that stuff, or excuse me, the Ohio State University. And it was lovely to have that shift. And I wonder, your experience with Musicians on Call and watching that happen, when you see a patient, taking in an artist that they're super passionate about, can you see like them change? Can you see an actual shift in their I guess persona or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like it's so funny. It literally happened today. So before I came here to see you, I was at a children's hospital here in Nashville. And I was with this incredible musician, Kelsey Ballerini. And she's volunteered with us for years and years. And she's just one of those beautiful people that is not only a talented, performer and singer, but the way she's able to connect with people is just so unique. Like she's just such a kind, warm person that people just really gravitate towards her. And so when we go into the hospital to visit patients, the way it works is we have two people that go. We've got a volunteer guide and we have a volunteer musician. So today I was playing the role of the guide. And basically what my role is to liaise with the hospital and to be the first person that goes into the room to see if someone's interested in hearing music that day. Because think about it, if you're in the hospital, you're having surgery, you're battling cancer, whatever you're in there for, you may just not be in the mood. So we don't want to force someone to have to listen to this and they've got a splitting headache, And so, one of the things that I do as a guide is to go in, knock on the door, introduce myself and what we do, and see if they're interested. And so I knock on this door, and there was, a teenager in there, and she was there with one of the nurses. And, I explained, hey, I'm Pete from Musicians on Call. We've got an artist here that would love to sing a song. Would you be interested in music? And the patient responded, no. And I said, well, that's fine. And so the nurse said to the patient, like, are you sure? You sure you don't want to hear like just one song? And the patient just looked at me and said no. And, she was kind of mumbling, and it made me think like maybe she was on medication. Like it felt like she was a little bit out of it. Yeah. And so again, I'm not trying to disturb. I'm like, of course, that's totally fine. Thanks for letting me in the room. And the caregiver asked her again, like, are you sure just one song? Like maybe you just want to hear one song. And so finally, reluctantly, the girl was like, okay, fine. And so I was like, are you sure it's okay? Yeah, okay. So then I bring Kelsey in. And again, Kelsey's so warm and vibrant. And Kelsey, was asking this girl, what kind of music do you like? I'd love to play something that you knew. And excuse me, she said, well, I love country. And Kelsey said, do you like Chris Stapleton? You know that song, Tennessee Whiskey? And she's like, oh yeah, I like that song a lot. So Kelsey starts playing Tennessee Whiskey. And she starts singing. And next thing you know, this girl who I was having trouble understanding, was kind of mumbling, seemed a little bit out of it, is singing along. And it got to the point as the song went on that Kelsey's just playing her guitar, and this girl is belting out Tennessee Whiskey. And it was just absolutely incredible because, it went from, she was, speaking at a whisper and you couldn't really hear her, to now she's belting out this song to the point where caregivers are coming into the hallway, with tears in their eyes, listening to this girl sing who they didn't know could sing. And she was just belting out this music. And as I was, I'm kind of by the door of the room and letting them have their moment.
Yeah.
And the caregiver, whispered to me that, she was having a really, really bad day. And it was just, it was a very difficult day for her. And we don't ask, we're not supposed to ask, like, what are they going through? Why are they there?
Yeah.
But it was clear that she was going through it.
Yeah.
And by the time we left the room, she was laughing, she was singing, she was bubbly, she was chatting with Kelsey. And it just changed the whole day. And you think about it, these doctors are working and nurses are working miracles to help her with whatever she's dealing with. But there's no medicine that they could prescribe that did what happened in the room just this morning, that changed her whole mood, that brought joy to her, that brought a new outlook and positivity to her. And that was a dose of music. It was a song that did that.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that so much. And that speaks so much to everything you're saying. And I mean, it's interesting how music affects your mental health and your mental health affects your physical health. Yeah. There's this very intertwined relationship there that is, I think, being more understood than ever now. But I don't think I grasped that part of it until recently, and hearing this is so amazing. If you guys ever need a bass player to slap at a bass, I'm in. I would love to. I just think it's so wonderful that this is happening so often in so many places, and you guys have grown so significantly in only 25 years, and congratulations on, leading from the front, and the 25th year celebration. I imagine there's even more going on right now than ever, and it's really wonderful to hear your personal experience with all of this. I think there's so much to learn in what you've gone through, and I think to your point though, like there's probably a lot of people out there who've had similar experiences and maybe will hopefully feel a little more comfortable sharing their own stuff with someone and vibrating with others in that capacity, letting their personal experience resonate with others, I think is what I'm getting at. I really appreciate that you made time for this, given how much you have going on, especially that you were at the hospital right before this and came right over here. It means a lot to me to hear your story. As I've told you, my goal with this is really to learn, and I've learned a lot talking with you today. This is, really fascinating to know how far you've come and to know you're in such a good place now. Looking back at this whole thing, you must feel like it was all pointing at getting here. Do you feel like now, compared to when you were at the end of those 9 years, realizing you wanted to get to a place like this, do you feel like you're exactly where you should be? Is it kind of like do you wake up with that? Do you feel that?
I do. I feel like it all added up to where I was supposed to be and where I'm at. And at the end of the day, I'm thinking back to, kind of what you mentioned when we first started talking about how the world can be a bit crazy and divisive and everything else. That the truth is that if there's a silver bullet to any of this, it's about sharing. Yeah. Sharing what you have. Yeah. Whether it's your time, whether it's your talents, your energy, your positivity, your voice, your platform, your resources, your money, whatever it might be, whatever that thing is that you have to give. If we all gave something, it changes people's lives. Yes. And just thinking about, today, and every day around the country with our volunteers, they're giving their time, they're giving their energy, their positivity, they're giving their talents with music, and it changes people's lives. And it's funny, the biggest piece of feedback I get in the hospital from patients and their family members isn't about the music, isn't about the song that was played. It was about how much they appreciate that someone decided to spend their day helping strangers that they don't even know. Yeah. Spending an hour or two of your day trying to make someone else's day better. Like, what a gift. And all that took no money. It took nothing. It just took time and the consideration to say, you know what, like, I'm going to spend my energy today trying to be positive, trying to help someone else out. And you just think about if that was how we viewed the world all the time,
right?
How different things would be,
Yeah.
right? It's not about whether you're right or wrong or, you know, who's got a better idea. It's about, well, what if we all just were empathetic and said, I'm going to spend my energy today kind of being a little more thoughtful about you and how I might be able to help you. I mean, it'd be a nice world to live in.
I love that, the sound of that. That's what I'm going for, Pete.
Yeah.
I think we're getting there in small ways, and I think this year in particular is going to test everyone. You know, in America specifically, you know, we are in for quite a ride these next, you know, 7 months or whatever. And I'm hopeful, you know, about it, but I'm also putting this out there because I think it's my way of addressing that, you know, and God help us all, you know, like it's not an easy world to live in. I think there's so much coming at us all the time that if we can each try to put something, you know, a little bit softer, a little bit more gentle out there, I think, you know, it will help. And it certainly, I think, helps me when I do it. And so that's what I'm driving at here. You know, I'm out of questions. You've shared so many beautiful, amazing things. I'm really grateful. If there's any, like I try to ask, I don't always remember to ask, but if there's any other stories or anything you feel like you'd like to share, you know, we've got the time. I feel like we've covered like such important topics. You know, to me, bullying is something I didn't exactly experience, but I saw it, and I know, like I've had some stuff, you know, with my own family where the kid gets messed with at school and he's young and it's early, and that's what happens when kids are kids. But it's made me realize if you don't intercede on those things, you know, like how things can go, and clearly you found your way through, but it's not always the case.
Yeah. But I mean, listen, I think that, you know, what you're doing here is part of the solution, right? It's about, you're someone who has a platform. You're a member of a band that so many people know and love. And I think you can choose to just enjoy that.
Yeah. Or
or you can enjoy it and try to do something with it, which is what you're trying to do, which is amazing, because, the truth is, again, I've got, friends of mine that are bankers and investors and capitalists that are like, it's really great. It's noble what you're doing. And I wish I could do something like that. And it's like, no, continue to make money, but then donate some of that money and help people with it.
Yeah.
We all have a role to play if we choose to.
Yes.
And it's just beautiful that you're choosing to elevate these topics and these stories, because at the end of the day, if there's one person that it resonates with, that it nudges in a different direction, then it was all worthwhile, right?
Yes.
And I think this will affect many, many people, but I think, you just have to look at it like that, as it's just about one life. It's about one person. And if that's the nudge I can make, then I've done a great job,
Well, you've nudged mine in a great direction, and you've given me a lot to think about, and I'm sure it'll resonate with the people who get to see this. And it's funny you say about the one person, because my goal with this was very simple, was to affect just one single person. It'll be worth every bit of effort I put into this. And I think, sometimes it's not about the outcome, it's the doing. It's the being immersed in a process, and yeah, this is not always comfortable, to talk about. But I think the more you make the uncomfortable comfortable, the more comfortable everything is, and that's where I'm at. And I'm also in need of reflecting on my own stories, and so hearing this stuff from you and from the guests I've been able to talk to already, it's very eye-opening and revealing about how I see myself and things I've thought of. And now I get to go back and think about all the moments, that can pertain to what I'm learning through you. So it's really it's a wonderful thing, I think, to be doing as much for that one person who it'll affect. But I see the process, helping me through my internal, introspection.
Yeah.
As you said, like that is something we can't help but do.
Yeah.
But it's important, and sometimes it's like your life can be so busy that you never take that time, and that's part of it too, is giving ourselves the space, and I'll say it again, having the stillness to like see where we're really at.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very valuable thing. I'm glad you were there and found your way out of what wasn't essentially healthy, and you found this, so.
Well, I'm interested to hear when you've wrapped up meeting with people in this kind of batch of what you're doing here.
Yeah,
I'd be interested to hear what you've taken away, because there's that old adage, you receive more the more you give, or
Yeah.
when you give, you get, and that's not why we do it.
Right.
But the truth is that's what happens. And so as you've kind of embarked on this path to share stories and spread information and knowledge and everything with others, it'd be interesting to see what you've gotten from it all. And I don't think you went into this selfishly, but I have a feeling that when this is all said and done, it's probably going to have had a big effect on you, right?
Absolutely. I'm learning so much, every time I do one of these, and it's definitely on my list when the season wraps to go through that stuff and to share it with everyone, because I think that's part of it is it's like on my checklist of, what's the best way to say this? Like taking account of the experiences and the lessons learned, because that's what it's meant to do for others, but it's absolutely happening to me. So I'll make sure I text you that link.
Let's have a rap party at Ocean's Calling.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're coming.
Yeah, of course I'm coming.
Awesome. I love it. What a lineup this year.
Oh my gosh. It was literally like, I went through that list with my wife, and I was like, so I would say this is probably like 6 or 7 of my top 10 bands of all time are at this. I was like, there's no way we're not going.
I love it. We'll do some good hanging out there.
Yeah.
I'll look forward to seeing you again. Thank you again for making time. And I hope everyone enjoyed this experience hearing from Pete Griffin, Musicians on Call. Thanks for being with us. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I'll see you again soon.
Thanks so much.
All right. Take care, guys.